Our Johannesburg studios in Randburg. I'm Ziyanda Ngcobo and I'm bringing you a roundup of all that's happened at the MADLANGA Commission of Inquiry this week. Well, you'll know that Shadrack Sibiya's last 2 days on the stand, at least for now, saw him crying foul and accusing the evidence leader of doing the bidding for KZN top cop Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. And suspended Ekurhuleni head of human resources Linda Gxasheka had her turn to respond to allegations made about her. So was she in a cabal with advocate Kemi Behari and former city manager Dr Imogen Mashazi? Well, I'll let you decide as we look back at the week that was. Artificial intelligence seems to have made its way into counter-allegations at the Commission, with suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya claiming that the voice recording of alleged cartel boss Vusumuzi Cat Matlala that incriminates him has been manipulated. Cibia made an impassioned plea at the inquiry not to give credence to some of the evidence that implicates him in wrongdoing. He also claimed that those who've provided some of the material as being corrupt investigating officers belonging to the political killings task team, whom he claims have a vendetta against him.
In a bid to discredit evidence implicating him of wrongdoing, suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya has not only challenged the accuracy of such evidence, but also questioned the motivation of those who gathered it. Cibia dismissed members of the KZN political killings task team as corrupt and fueled by a long-existing vendetta against him.
This is not a clean investigation at all. Now, when you question me about an investigation that was conducted by the suspects themselves, that took money from accused number 1 in Fort Hare University with evidence, investigated by the DPCI. Now I must be questioned about some junior officials who are corrupt themselves, who booked someone from the cells and then started creating some material that must be produced here and be read here. I don't accept it.
Cibia continued his testimony before the MADLANGA inquiry on Monday. He appeared to take exception to a voice recording of alleged cartel boss Vusumuzi Cat Matlala made during his interrogation shortly after his arrest in May 2025. In it, Matlala, among other things, claimed to have given Cibia 20 impalas and given money for the now suspended Deputy Police Commissioner in exchange for his assistance regarding the 360 million rand SAPS tender he had. Cibia refuted this, saying there was no ounce of truth in this suggestion and that investigating officers who were members of the PKTT had ulterior motives given the strained relations between him and the team's supervisors.
I am categorically denying that I ever received any such delivery from Mr. Matlala's side or from Nkosi's side, because I didn't need them at that time. Now, I'm saying also that I am not saying what I'm saying because I'm being asked questions. I don't want to get or be pushed into a corner of saying, yeah, you knew it comes from Matlala. I had nothing that I've assisted Matlala with, nothing that I worked with him on, and he had no reason to give me anything because I have never assisted him. I don't think he would invest in a dead horse.
Testimony before the commission, however, implicates Cibia, painting him as not only a close ally of alleged cartel bosses, but having gone as far as arresting those accusing them of wrongdoing and sharing sensitive information with those alleged criminals. When confronted with such evidence, Cibia again resorted to bemoaning the commissioner's line of questioning.
Commissioner Baloyi put a fact, and as I tried to respond, said, no. Then she goes and she goes. Then I tried to. Then you understand that she actually wants me to enter into that one door, and it's a problem for me. It's really don't overwhelm me. The authority is different. I am sitting here where I am, and you are at a higher authority in such a way that I have to respect the authority. And the fact that where you are coming from, you're speaking from a position of power, does not necessarily mean that now it compels me to concede.
For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Junior Kumalo in Pretoria.
But just when we thought the funny facial expressions and Cibia feeling oppressed was over, Tuesday provided even more quotables and memes from the Commission. The temperature in Cibia's hot seat continued to rise when he was probed about why a service provider of the SAPS, in this case Nhlanhla, was invited to his private residence, and how did he not seem to see a conflict of interest in that. Once again, the name of organised crime head Major General Richard Shibiri has come up again in relation to Nhlanhla.
You are aware that Mr. Nhlanhla is a service provider, and you invite him to a celebration at your home. And as a service provider, bearing in mind this is not like Service Excellence Awards or those kind of situations which are formal, professional kind of environments where service providers are. This is a private, intimate affair. Isn't that contrary to the SAPS regulations and national instructions that govern how you are to manage conflicts of interest? Because isn't that a risk? So quite apart from criminality, isn't it a risk that you may be seen to be biased in favor of a service provider?
I want to answer it in twofold. The first one is the fact that I'm a detective. And if Mr. Nhlanhla is a service provider who works for supply chain, where they allocate tenders, or him supplying service in the detective space, I would be a little bit cautious in doing that. But the second thing that I want to...
sorry, before you say the second thing, can you just repeat for me? You said if something, then you would be cautious, but I didn't quite understand.
I said I would be cautious, or maybe apply my mind in having to invite someone that I know that is a service provider in the detective space, and I invite him to me. But the supply chain is a division on its own, which is far from where I am. I don't even know the people who sit on how tenders are allocated. So I'm far from that space. So I know him as a stakeholder in the police. And that being the case, it's not like it was the first time it's happening with Nhlanhla. Moving to the second part and say, what applies to the goose must also apply to the ganders.
And this is arguably one of the points at which I can say things started to get uncomfortable.
As regards your first part of your answer, you said that you're not in supply chain management. So, therefore, it's okay to have had a service provider present. I am making a distinction here between engaging with service providers as stakeholders in a professional context and having a service provider at a private, intimate family gathering, that there's a difference. So just bearing that in mind, can your regulations and instructions dealing with conflicts of interest, doesn't it apply to every employee within SAPS, not only to some? So meaning anybody who might be at risk of showing bias to service provider, even if you're not in supply chain management, that is something you need to be cautious about.
I'm not an expert in that regard or no have knowledge, deep knowledge around that aspect, other than to say that I'm sure as human beings, in the absence of being a policeman, I'm a human being. If I have a death case in the family, or I have an event, and then there's someone that I know, I have seen situations where someone says, hey, I can't invite you because obviously it's going to be questionable. That why did I invite this one or that one, maybe at the wedding. But in my case, at that point in time, I really didn't mind if he's coming, because the main reason, the main purpose was to come to collect his wife per se.
Throughout his 5-day testimony, Cibia was at pains to try and counter the narrative that he and Witness F, who was ultimately unveiled as Sergeant Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, weren't the only ones who shared a special relationship. The suspended head of crime detection consistently tried to point to the commission that Nkosi also had close ties with other top SAPS generals, including Nkosi Sentumule and even KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi.
I want to put just on the table, whether it is accepted or rejected, is that let's take Sergeant Nkosi and put him in the center. Let's draw the same communication to General Mkhwanazi, to General Sentumule, the attendance of the events, the biking together, the communication, the same approach. If we look at it, I'm just trying to say, I'm going to be left in a picture where, yeah, there was this agreement, there was this meeting, and there was this thing, but it was just a norm, a normal practice where he was a socialite and talking to many senior officials. I was just putting that on the table, Chair. That's all.
But the constant attempts by Cibia to distance himself from Sergeant Nkosi and him being his go-between started to fade away when Cibia forwarded a confidential document, an audit report to be specific, to Witness F. It's in this report that was only shared amongst top generals within the police service, which discusses the irregularities of the 360 million rand Medicare 24 tender and its possible cancellation. This classified document was not only leaked to a journalist who made inquiries about it, but Sergeant Nkosi went on to share it with Nhlanhla after receiving it from Cibia.
You accept that this one says it's a confidential document? It was
a confidential document.
And it's not an excuse. You see, if somebody has leaked a confidential SAPS document to a journalist, and you come into possession of that document, it's not an answer to say, somebody leaked it before, so I can also leak it. That's not how it works. If it's confidential, it's confidential. So you don't perpetuate the leak.
Here, once it's in the public domain, it's no longer confidential.
And so, as you've just heard, that in his own defense, Cibia claimed that once the report was leaked to the journalist, it was as good as being already in the public domain.
General, before the adjournment, I was asking about whether you're aware of any prescripts that govern the SAPS and sharing of information, confidential information.
Yes, Chair, I am aware. Chair.
Were you aware at the time when you did share this information?
I was aware, Chair, but to as far as I'm concerned, I was aware that a confidential document that is already out in the public space is not really, it doesn't carry the same weight as if it is not in the public space. Because once the cat is out of the sack, it doesn't carry the same weight. It's no longer really as confidential as it is.
Is that according to your prescripts?
It is the way it is.
And would you agree that if a story is in the public domain, so, you know, a journalist writing about that there's an audit, that this journalist is aware that an audit has been conducted and that recommendations have been made, but there's a delay in acting on the recommendations, but doesn't actually circulate the journalist, or the article doesn't actually contain the audit report itself, right? If it doesn't do that, in those circumstances, is it appropriate? Is it still in the public domain? And can you still circulate it?
Once it is with the journalist, it's already in the public domain.
Once the report is with the journalist.
Yeah, and especially when the journalist is using it and to make inquiries, the confidentiality thereof is already broken.
But as I said earlier, this became a sticky point for the Commission, and Cibia faced a barrage of questions that he seemingly just couldn't get out of.
And the worrying thing, which is where I wanted to go to with this, is that you are sending a document that is about the cancellation of a contract with a service provider to Sergeant Nkosi, knowing it will get to that service provider. So it's not just any member of the public that's receiving it, it's the person who is affected by that internal SAPS document. And that's the concern. Do you see that?
I do.
I'm going to move off this to, well, not entirely off it, because what happens next is you'll see that, let's get the right page, it's file 9, I'm afraid.
I don't know if you are still going to touch on this, and if you are, please stop me, Ms. Hassim. General, to my mind, the timing of this is quite important because the contract was cancelled in June of 2025. May of 2025. I'm thinking of the award. The award was in June of the previous year. So the cancellation was in May 2025. And these chats are in March of 2025. So in a situation where you see the probability of these documents, these chats, these communications reaching Mr. Nhlanhla through Sergeant Nkosi, you were basically sharing, and I suggest this to you, you were basically sharing with Sergeant Nkosi to alert Mr. Nhlanhla as to what was happening. And what was happening, with hindsight now, eventually resulted in the cancellation of the contract. So you are upfront alerting Mr. Nhlanhla through Sergeant Nkosi. You are basically saying, hey, be aware, there's trouble brewing. That is what I'm suggesting to you.
And in a volcanic eruption from Cibia, after facing non-stop questions about why he, as a top general, deemed it necessary to share this confidential information, exploded into this interaction with Commissioner Sesi Baloyi.
I didn't ask you about what people do. I asked you about your explanation for distributing this to Sergeant, because it's a direct question. And if you repeat it the third time, I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow you to keep on doing that. And you can keep complaining about me. I will ask you my questions. I'm going to repeat my question before we get to Ms. Hassim. General, I'm going to ask you my question again. and I will interrupt you if you don't give me a direct answer. My question to you is, this document that you say you circulated, you gave to Sergeant Nkosi because it was in the public domain. My question to you is, if it is in the public domain to which Sergeant Nkosi has access to, why do you send him this document? That's my question. That's my first question to you. So maybe try and answer, and we'll come back to Ms. Hassim on my second question.
My question is this, Chair. If the document is already out there in the wild, I take it that the cat is already out of the
Like the impalas.
of the sack. You see, I don't want to say. I don't want to say she's being arrogant, but she's
making a joke
no,
with
you
you, that's
started
what
it. But Chair, we need to really respect each other and try to be modest with one another in a platform like this and be professional. So if she goes that way, I'm going to take the different route as well, and it's not what we want.
So when we come back, I'll bring you more of Sibiya's testimony, where it didn't just end there between him and Adila Hassim. He took direct aim at her, even going as far as accusing her of being Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's lawyer. So tensions flared in more ways than one. You don't want to miss out on that. Welcome back. We're still looking back at the testimony by Shadrack Sibiya at the Commission earlier on this week. Now, he's yet to return to the inquiry despite having already concluded 5 days on the stand. Cibia told commissioners that he feels oppressed and at war with the system.
I'm at war with the system. I find myself, I was working, all was normal. I was going to work every day and having done nothing wrong. All of a sudden, one day, boom, there is a press conference, my name is mentioned, and then my name is mentioned also in allegations that don't need me, and the next thing, I am suspended, and now the stress also against me, so I found myself in that situation. To me, and when we say we are at war, as we speak, I'm at war fighting for my career now. I describe it that way. Even sitting here is war.
Cibia is saying all of this well into the evening on Tuesday night, when proceedings continued until around 8 p.m. Again, an impassioned plea from Cibia was for the commissioners to remember that this was a part of a larger conspiracy against him.
What worries me, Chair, quite honestly speaking, is that, you see, I have lots and lots that I could also put forward. But where you find that it was not accepted, or maybe, like the chair said, no, put in a supplementary. But at some point, I go feeling like it looked like the evidence leader is General Mkhwanazi's lawyer. Is this still in the Commission's mandate in terms of us working with the drug cartels, or is this something else in terms of the lifestyle audit and whatever, so that I know in which field I am now? Because now it's focusing on me and my lifestyle, and in the meantime, I thought I was going to be asked more questions about the drug cartel. I'm bearing my being here from the July 6th press briefing, and then I thought I was going to be asked about how I fit into Katiso Molefe, Mr. Swart was matters, and I wanted to know what role did I play, and now the questioning is far from those things. It's just based on my communication with Nkosi, communication with that one, communication with this, my lifestyle. So it's just, I don't know whether I'm still real on the same railway line, or or
Let me put
it's just broad?
But it seems that part of why Cibia ramped up his victimhood claims was also after a series of questions revolving around Steve Mutsumi, a man who has clearly been painted as someone who's dangerous.
When Sergeant Nkosi testified before the commission, he confirmed that our Steve is a person by the name of Steve Mutsumi. Okay. Do you know someone named Steve Mutsumi?
I do.
Who is he?
He's a businessman that I know.
He's a businessman.
Yes.
In what business?
I think he's in the business of construction and also lending money, and then also associated with the taxi industry somehow. I don't know in what way.
Okay. How close are you to Mr. Mutsumi?
Not close.
Do you meet with him? Do you see him? Do you call him?
I think I've met him twice.
Do you recall when?
No. I can't.
Okay. When General Sonona came to the commission, he expressed, in fact, he requested that he does not mention Mr. Mutsumi's name in his evidence. And that was in the context of a text message that Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi sent him, okay, where Mr. Mutsumi's name was mentioned, and your name, but we'll get there. But it was particularly Mr. Mutsumi's name that General Sonona said he fears for his security, for his own physical safety, if he were to mention that name. Do you have any idea why that would be the case? Is Mr. Mutsumi a dangerous person?
I really don't know.
For more on this, I'm now joined by Chad Thomas. He's the CEO at IRS Forensic Investigations. Good afternoon to you, Chad. I mean, it's quite an interesting week at the Commission of Inquiry, just given how parallel to that, the South African Police Service was actually having a fraud and corruption in Bizo for 2 days. But listening in to Shadrack Sibiya, there's a very clear ethics problem. What are some of the glaring gaps that you've noticed since the start of this Commission of Inquiry when it comes to ethics and conflicts of interest? Because clearly it was lost upon someone as senior as Shadrack Sibiya. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon to you and to the viewers. Listening to Shadrack Sibiya now in your wrap, it was almost a case of Crimea River. The whole victim playing here is totally out of character of somebody that holds such a senior position within the police and should actually be held to account for his actions. He spoke about coming to the commission because he thought they're going to be speaking about drug cartels. He's a general. He is the second most important police officer and most senior police officer in South Africa as the Deputy National Commissioner, and he doesn't understand the terms of reference of the Commission of Inquiry. It's to talk about political interference, it's to talk about business interference, it's to talk about corruption at the very top. And all of these issues that have been ventilated impact on the credibility of the leadership and the deficit thereof of the police service as it currently stands. He has been implicated in having various relationships with various controversial individuals. One of the things that came out this week was his relationship with Vusi, which he's always denied, yet there's correspondence between himself and the so-called middleman, the bagman, the fixer, the go-between, Sergeant Nkosi, witness F, in respect to the delivery of impalas to the residents of Shadrack Sibiya, and those impalas were sponsored by Vusi. Yeah. So it's deny, play the victim, and then accuse the evidence leader of taking sides with Mkhwanazi. One must remember that this entire commission would never have been established if it wasn't for the fact that Mkhwanazi took a stand on July 6th of last year. So of course Mkhwanazi plays a vital role. He also had something else to say about Mkhwanazi. He couldn't understand how a provincial commissioner was getting so much attention in the media compared to others. And that to me struck a chord, because you must remember, Mkhwanazi isn't a normal provincial commissioner. He's the ex-acting national commissioner from 2012. He's also a qualified operator and somebody that the public has been looking up to, especially in respect of what's been happening in terms of the fighting of crime in KwaZulu-Natal.
And I mean, Chad, you know, one of the things that also struck a chord with me sitting inside that auditorium was thinking about how, if you listen to what Cibia had to say about how why he was reaching out to Mutumi, the checks and balances, because maybe he did genuinely reach out to Mutumi or any other people in certain industries for information as a part of, you know, crime intelligence gathering, but somehow that seems to have morphed into friendships. And it's almost common cause about the state of IPID and its paralysis. How do we monitor that what is meant to be a part of your duties, reaching out to the taxi industry to try and take a more proactive approach, doesn't lead to an infiltration and possible corruption and collusion with the people that you're supposed to be investigating?
It's not the role of the Deputy National Commissioner to embark on intelligence gathering operations. Yes, there may be a time where you're called to meetings with business leaders and you try, you know, sort out factors within those industries that are problematic. And the taxi industry, we've always known, has been problematic for years. There's murder for hire, there's shooting of innocent bystanders, there's taking over of ranks, there's fighting over routes. But again, when it comes to the actual investigation of a docket, it's not done by a Deputy National Commissioner. When it comes to intelligence gathering, it's not done by a Deputy National Commissioner. He's there to give direction, and he's there to implement policy that comes from the very top. So I don't see any justification for all these meetings with all these purported bad actors that have been linked to so many things. And now, when it comes to Steve Motsepe, he's not one of those that are on trial. He's not a Katie Molefe. He's not a Vusikat Matlala. But he seems to be fitting it within that category, especially if one has to listen to what Sergeant Nkosi, Witness F, had to say about his concerns for safety regarding this gentleman.
And, you know, I know this may be a difficult question to answer, Chad, but are we able to, at least now, well into day 67 of the inquiry, to quantify the amount of damage these kind of relations and the testimony we've heard, at least not around Cibia, who was meant to be leading a crime detection unit, what impact that has had on cases? I mean, the case of Jerry Bushoga, who's still missing, comes to mind when I ask you this question.
The case of Jerry Bushoga is a heartbreaking case. We've engaged with the media that met with the family. We've seen the horrific videos that were shown on television while he has been held in captivity. We don't know whether he's still alive or not. There's been no closure for the family. This is one of multiple cases playing out across the country. You then see political interference in respect of a blogger, where a deputy minister of police, on instruction purportedly from a secretary general of a political party, try influence police officers to try expedite an arrest on a blogger. They go as far as to approaching a criminal, Vusikat Matlala, to make use of his security company to try find this blogger. It's astounding that we see attention being focused on some cases, whereas the majority of South Africans who have been victims of crime or have family members who have been victims of crime are crying out for justice. We have a 12% murder rate resolution in this country. In other words, only 12% of murder cases are resolved with convictions. Yet we see people running after a blogger because of political interference. And that's what this commission is all about.
Absolutely astounding. Chad Thomas, thank you very much for your time. He's the CEO at IRS Forensic Investigations. I mean, the statistics are astounding in that regard. All right, so on the other side of this, the Commission also is starting to notice a pattern of witnesses who are called upon to assist the inquiry in its second phase, calling in sick. And you've just heard Chad Thomas speaking about it, but gossip blogger Musa Kaula might be making his way to the inquiry. He took to social media platforms about this. I'll tell you more about that when we return. Thanks for continuing to make Channel 405 your channel of choice. So Wednesday's proceedings were no longer than 30 minutes after the witness who was meant to appear called in sick. The next testimony was expected to come from a crime intelligence colonel who's yet to be named, but it's understood that they are one of Brown Mokgotzi's co-handlers. Nevertheless, the inquiry had some strong words for those who seem to be taking chances when it comes to appearing before the commission and then suddenly calling in sick.
With the risk that this may be a recurring issue, as you indicate. I mean, I think we've had this before, if not with this witness, then with other witnesses, that perhaps you may want to consider whether at some point, if this persists, whether a medical doctor or health professional who signs a certificate should not be called to come and testify. Alternatively, whether there are no appropriate circumstances to compel a witness to come if we end up with certificates like this. For example, in this case, it's an option available to the Commission, and we would ask you to address us on that at the appropriate time. Do we call the doctor? Do you apply and ask for a warrant to get the witness to come here because they don't provide satisfactory explanation and proof that they are unwell? Those are factors that I suggest you may want to consider. It is unacceptable that we've got A1 this morning. It says nothing about the condition of the patient and whether this patient has been seen by this person in the way that I've read, that according to my knowledge / I have been informed. It doesn't tell us that whoever signed this saw this patient, and that this is their opinion that he cannot come and appear before us.
And overnight on Wednesday, gossip blogger Musa Kaula taking to his X platform to poke at ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula and businessman Ziyanda Ngcobo after the Commission's investigating team reached out to him. Now, Kaula's name has come up at the inquiry after his warrant of arrest was sent to Kat Matlala in order for the private security owner to assist with apprehending him. Now, testimony from Sergeant Nkosi, who's also known as Witness F, indicates that there was political pressure from Deputy Police Minister Castle Matale, which cascaded down to Cibia, who then sent a team to find Kaula urgently. This, according to Nkosi, was all because Kaula had insulted Mbalula and Ngcobo in his previous posts. The Commission has shunned upon the blogger's behavior.
It's important to say that the Commission does not ventilate its confidential communication in public. There are many engagements that are unfolding with a number of individuals, persons of interest, potential witnesses. And we certainly do not want to get into a discussion in public on any of those individual matters. That is between the Commission and those individuals. In this particular case, the individual has gone public themselves and communicated, whatever he communicated. Again, for our part, we are now not going to get into that conversation in public. And so we want to respect the confidentiality of the Commission's engagements with individuals, and we certainly don't want to encourage that kind of discussion. And we would also want to discourage individuals with whom the Commission is having confidential engagements to then be going public and putting out on social media the Commission's engagements with them. And literally in this case, what seems to be a screenshot of the Commission's engagement with this particular individual.
On Thursday, the Commission returned to the testimony regarding the Ekurhuleni Metro, with suspended head of HR, Linda Gxasheka, taking the stand. Gxasheka, you'll recall, is accused of forming part of a cabal that provided cover for Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi, which shielded him from accountability from the numerous allegations. This ranges from how she uplifted his suspension after an adverse finding from IPID in 2023 about the installation of blue lights in Nhlanhla's personal vehicles, right through to the hiring of 55 personnel when Mkhwanazi was acting EMPD chief without the requisite powers. She started off her testimony by denying allegations that she ever tried to usurp the powers of suspended EMPD chief Jabulani Isaac Mabiyeye.
There, if we go back to page 41 of that file 2, the allegation in 3.1.2 is that you supported the exercise of powers by the erstwhile city manager, Dr Mashazi, notwithstanding that powers were, the relevant powers were being vested in the chief of police. And you respond to that from paragraph 29. Can I ask you to explain your response to the Commission?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Again, my intention here is to submit in front of the Commission that whereas Isaac Mabiyeye, the Chief of Police, refers to SAPS Act, Section 64C, as the ultimate law that governs EMPD. The city is regulated by other laws. I could have articulated this previously. We have the Municipal Systems Act, specifically I think Section 55, but I'm not going to dwell on that. Municipal Structures Act, Municipal Finance Management Act, Municipal Staff Regulation, as amended in September 2021. Labor Relations Act that we must prescribe to or subscribe to, the Disciplinary Procedure Collective Agreement, amongst other few legal prescripts that can be mentioned that governs the city of Ekurhuleni. I further submit that the city manager is the ultimate authority in all matters and functionaries relating to operations of the municipality, specifically in this instance, municipal police services.
It was then time to deal with the installation and registration of blue lights under the municipality in vehicles belonging to CAT VIP Services, a private security company owned by MADLANGA. It was at this moment when Gxasheka made the shocking claim that what we've heard so far at the Commission regarding the Ekurhuleni Metro was just the tip of the iceberg.
The issue came to my attention through Mr. Ngciza. I think it was around 15th February 2023. That's why we're in this journey. Via WhatsApp, where he shared the video clips regarding the blue lights that were installed in some cars, although it did not show, by the way, who was in the car, nor the registration, but what I saw in the TikTok video clip, it was just written, typed by somebody, the registration. Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi then requested a meeting to discuss the suspension of Julius Mkhwanazi. It is imperative that one outlines the city's designation. By the way, Commissioner Mkhwanazi, in terms of how he's appointed, I think I've already alluded to that, is the Deputy Chief of Police. A few days later, the meeting was held in the boardroom of the city manager. Xolani and Chief Mabiyeye engaged me in the boardroom of the city manager. And this will be subsequent to the meeting. It is on their statement, where Chief of Police and Xolani Ngciza went to meet with Dr Mashazi, I think in Dada Motor dealership, something like that. There's a meeting that took place there in some offices. Strange enough. And in their discussion, from what I read here, in their statements. Then Dr. Mashazi said, engage the acting HOD as well, so that she's kept abreast. Again, commissioners and chairperson, I want to bring it to you that we were brought into this matter by the chief of police. He takes a junior employee, instead of disciplining the junior employee, he feels he must engage Dr. Mashazi and he must engage, subsequently I must be engaged. It's correct, I'm the acting HOD. Nhlanhla reports to me, by the way. He's a divisional head, and he always continued to report to me.
Gxasheka began to paint a picture of how she, too, was also placed in harm's way through trying to understand what happened in the Blue Light saga. She claims that her subordinate at the time, Nhlanhla, advised that the suspension be lifted as an arrest from IPID, which was also investigating the matter, was imminent.
The issue came to my attention through Mr. Ngciza. I think it was around 15th February 2023. That's why we're in this journey. Via WhatsApp, where he shared the video clips regarding the blue lights that were installed in some cars, although it did not show, by the way, who was in the car, nor the registration. But what I saw in the TikTok video clip, it was just written, typed by somebody, the registration. Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi then requested a meeting to discuss the suspension of Julius Mkhwanazi. It is imperative that one outlines the city's designation, by the way, Commissioner Mkhwanazi, in terms of how he's appointed. I think I've already alluded to that, is the Deputy Chief of Police. A few days later, the meeting was held in the boardroom of the city manager. Olani and Chief Mapieya engaged me in the boardroom of the city manager. And this will be subsequent to the meeting. It is on their statement, where Chief of Police and Nhlanhla went to meet with Dr. Mashazi, I think in Dada Motor dealership, something like that. There's a meeting that took place there in some offices. Strange enough. And in their discussion, from what I read here, in their statements, then Dr. Mashazi said, engage the acting HOD as well, so that she's kept abreast. Again, commissioners and chairperson, I want to bring it to you that we were brought into this matter by the chief of police. He takes a junior employee, instead of disciplining the junior employee, he feels he must engage Dr. Mashazi and he must engage, subsequently, I must be engaged. It's correct, I'm the acting HOD. Nhlanhla reports to me, by the way. He's a divisional head, and he always continued to report to me.
So Mkhwanazi was eventually placed on suspension, but after 3 months, this was due to end in June 2023. So conversations about whether to extend the suspension or uplift it began as the city conducted its own investigations.
Dr. Mashazi called us. I'm on page 50. Paragraph 50. Around the month of May 2023, the accounting officer called the Chief of Police, Xolani, and HOD Kemi Behari and myself into a meeting. She wanted answers as to why the disciplinary hearing process of the erstwhile Brigadier Mkhwanazi has not commenced. Remember, the first 3 months has passed now, or is about to pass. Mr. Ngciza provided an explanation, including that the process has advanced. If you recall, commissioners, in his statement, he explained that at some point they were engaging IPID, and he took a discretion without talking to me, because remember that time I'm appointed, I'm no longer an acting HOD. I'm his absolute line manager, his absolute boss. But he took a decision that he'll use his discretion subsequent to the meeting they had with IPID. I've never met anybody from IPID to date, because I don't deal with SAPS matter, with crime investigation matters. I deal with HR matters. But in our discussion with IPID, from what he explained even on his statement, is that arrest is imminent. They're going to arrest. And therefore, he took a discretion that perhaps he should not discipline. He must wait for the arrest. 3 months is going. He doesn't discuss that with me or Dr. Mashazi. So he decided at that point in time he's not going to proceed with the disciplinary, waiting for that arrest.
Ultimately, the Commission resolved to continue with proceedings on Friday, and you'll recall that there was an attempt to postpone until next Monday to be able to deal with new documents that were submitted overnight. But then the Commission continued to be able to deal with the alleged tender fraud involving Vusimuzi Kat Matlala's wife, Tsakani. Now, Gxasheka faced questions about Baloyi's company, which was initially operating as a Shisanyama and converted to an entity called Buena Vista in 2023, which tendered for training. Now, this conversion of the enterprise took place a mere 2 weeks before the bid documents were due for submission.
That Ms. Baloyi only became a director of the company on the 26th of June 2023. That was a week after the bid invitation had been advertised, and it was less than a month before the closing date for the bid. You see that?
Yes.
And that, I want to put to you, ought to be something of a red flag if one is adjudicating tenders. If one sees that the only director becomes a director after your bid advertisement date and very close to submission date, that should raise some suspicions. Would you accept that? You're nodding.
I agree.
There are more red flags here.
Chief Evidence Leader Matthew Chaskelson had many questions about how HR allowed for a company which had several red flags related to tender fraud was ultimately awarded the contract.
Being a Chesanyama company, or apparently a Chesanyama company that until recently was in a completely different industry, had no training accreditations of its own. So if we look through this bid, we will see that there are no training accreditations that Buena Vista itself had. And let me take you there. But for now, before I take you there, would you agree that if Buena Vista had no training accreditations of its own, it couldn't qualify for this bid? Certainly not without entering into a JV with somebody who did.
I'm going to repeat that I'm agreeing with you from the layman's point of view, and I don't want to say I'm talking here on behalf of Finance Department. From the layman's point of view, but I'm sure Finance will have reasons and understanding of how subcontracting works. So I don't want me conceding to be a position of the Finance Department. I'm just saying from the layman's point of view, all this looks very strange.
And for most of Friday afternoon, Gxasheka was questioned about the investigation into the installation of blue lights, which appears to have only been done after a media inquiry from News 24.
You say it was Mama Cat who is alleged to have driven with blue lights. Who else is alleged to have driven with blue lights?
As you read, that they were furthermore allowed third parties to use or flash blue lights. I don't know who are those third parties.
You don't know?
No.
You don't know that they are allegedly people working for CAT security, that it is CAT security vehicles on which these blue lights were installed?
As I say, I don't know. I've never seen them. I don't even know how they look like. But from what you're saying, I agree that there were third parties that were allowed to use blue lights.
Are you saying here today that you're not aware of the fact that these allegations relate to the use of blue lights by Cat Security?
No.
You're not aware that... How can that be?
I don't think we're getting each other here, Che. I think we're missing each other a lot this afternoon. I'm saying I'm aware of the charges and I'm aware of what transpired. But the question that says, do you know these people? I'm saying I don't know these people. That's all I'm saying.
So you're aware that the charges are
Yes.
that Cat Security was allowed to use blue light vehicles that were registered through the EMPD?
Yes.
Please don't nod, please speak. Are you saying
Yes,
yes?
yes, Chair.
Yes, all right.
And
That's
you're aware...
Mrs. Gxasheka, that's what the question was throughout.
Yes.
You're aware that Cat Security is a company controlled by Mr. Cat Nhlanhla?
Yes.
And you're aware that Mr. Cat Nhlanhla is currently facing charges of attempted murder, kidnapping, and the like?
I saw that on TV. I was shocked.
And after an arduous and long afternoon, Gxasheka eventually conceded that it was Dr Imogen Mashazi that had put her under pressure to uplift that suspension against Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi. Well, that's all I have for this week's wrap of the proceedings at the MADLANGA Commission of Inquiry. But do stay tuned to Channel 405 next week. We'll still be covering all things happening at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. But for now, it's goodbye. Thank you for watching.